this government over their environmental record, and in fact a couple of them have done, the Ecology Action Centre, and the exact quote I used in the House the other day, stated that this government has essentially undermined the economic goals and environmental goals and Economic Prosperity Act. Thank you. Thank you. Nothing like a nice long name for an act. You know, Madam Speaker, yesterday it was announced by the Minister of the Environment that the greenhouse gas emission numbers have reduced in this province, and obviously that's good news. We learned later that that was actually only from power generation, and 4 studies, including information released in the past week by the Government of Canada, have actually indicated that the total greenhouse gas emissions for Nova Scotia have increased at a rate faster than the GDP in Nova Scotia over the past 5 years. And that's from 4 different sources, the Pamina Institute, the Government of Canada, see if I can remember them all. Larry Hughes, who's a local individual, well-known scientist at Dalhousie, and the 4th one was the Conference Board of Canada. And all 4 put out information over the past month indicating that Nova Scotia's total greenhouse gas emissions have increased. So while the power greenhouse gas emissions related to energy production have decreased, and I certainly agree with the Minister, and I do think that's a good thing. I don't want to take away from that, because that is a good thing. That is only half of what's generated in the province. And so I think we need to be concerned about that because it's widely accepted, and I think it's possible the Minister used this in his own remarks about a year ago, that we had this date of around 2015 that it's widely expected that world greenhouse gases need to level off and then decrease after that if we're to actually reverse some of the trends. And while our total greenhouse gases continue to increase, that's unlikely to happen. And I might remind all members of the House that that leaves us with less than 4 years to achieve that target. And that is an enormous target to hit, especially as we predict that when you know, Nova Scotia Power in their briefing earlier today on power rates talked about the fact that actually, as it happens, one of the reasons they managed to hit that greenhouse gas target on energy production was because of the recession. And that's not a reason. Now, obviously, some of it was because of renewables coming online, and I don't want to take away from that, but some of it was because of decreased demand for electricity due to the recession. And obviously, that's not the way that we want to hit our greenhouse gas targets. We want to become more efficient. I also want to continue to express concern about the fact that mercury emissions, the mercury emission targets have been delayed. And a lot of talk has been given about the fact that those mercury targets will be increased in the future, but the numbers that the department have given are identical to the numbers that the ministers were talking about for the next phase anyway. So it's not really that much of a change. And when you look at the fact that New Brunswick and particularly Alberta, which is heavily reliant on coal energy, has actually exceeded the mercury targets, we have to be very concerned about that, because mercury is a bioaccumulative substance in the environment. It's a substance that builds up. We know that salmon fishermen in Nova Scotia have expressed concern about that. Trout fishermen have expressed concern, in addition to more generalized environmental organizations. That is of deep, deep concern, Madam Speaker, because it is one of the most dangerous substances that is emitted from power generation in this province. And what the government has done is effectively said, you know, we're going to allow that to be relaxed. And that may have been, in 21 months, people will have different opinions on which was the worst one, but I personally feel that that was the single most environmentally damaging decision by this government, was to do that, because that's not a reversible decision. That's not a decision that you can change things later on. I think we should also recognize some of the things that private industry are doing. And let's be fair, some of them are for cost savings, and you know what, that's probably going to be the leading driver in terms of environmental change, is some of the cost drivers. And I believe it is FedEx, but it may be one of the other delivery companies in town, has switched to all electric vehicles for their deliveries within HRM. And I believe they've done the same thing within CBRM and so forth. And I think that's a major move, because that's something that actually measurably reduces the emissions from from transportation sector, and the transportation sector currently is responsible for 29.2% of all greenhouse gas emissions in Nova Scotia. And as the energy production emissions reduce, that 29.2% number actually will increase unless we decrease the emissions from transportation. And that's why we really need to be looking at things like a provincial strategy on transit. We are one of the only provinces in Canada that does not have a transit plan that supports capital and operating costs of municipalities across the province. And obviously, we're standing in the municipality with the largest transit system, but we are not standing in the municipality with the only transit system. Nor are we standing in the municipality as the only one that wants to expand one. And I know there's Truro, for example, I met with the mayor of Truro a number of weeks ago, and they are looking at establishing a transit system, and I think that's a very good move. It's a very exciting move. But those transit systems, especially in more marginal communities, are only going to survive with stable long-term funding. And I know that we look to the federal government for some of this through gas tax funding and other measures, but there are opportunities by the province to become, as I say, one of the only, if not one of the only provinces now left in Canada that does not provide an operating assistance program for transit systems. That's the kind of thing that's going to make a real measurable difference in the environment. There are other things too. We really need to look at, I know a number of members of the House on all sides had the opportunity to participate in the Drive Wiser program recently. And the interesting thing about that is they pointed out that when you look at your carbon footprint of a vehicle, replacing your vehicle may actually have a higher carbon footprint than actually just driving your existing vehicle better. And if you think about that, that makes a lot of sense. You think about the carbon footprint and the energy involved in producing a new vehicle and so forth. And if you have a vehicle, regardless of if it's giant or small, that's less than 10 years old, the odds are that you can improve your carbon emissions more by driving better. And some of them were obvious, but some of them were not. And I would encourage everybody, if they get a chance, to participate in that. We also need to be looking at how we deal with situations. I raised the other day the issue of how do we deal with the mercury vapor and the phosphor or high pressure sodium lights that will be removed as we go to the LEDs. The LEDs are a good idea. It's a good idea to change the highway lights, but we still have to dispose of the other lights. And we have to have a plan in place to do that. And we haven't seen a plan in place to do that yet. And that's going to be significant when you're dealing with the number of lights we have across this province. So on the one side, that becomes a good announcement, but on the other hand, there's a big hole. And so there are similar ones, there are similar issues like that we do need to address. It's how do you ensure that the measures we take to improve the environment do not have a short-term or even long-term negative effect. And that's one that could have a long-term effect if it's not addressed right. And it's one that can provide economic opportunities in Nova Scotia. We have some of the most amazing and innovative work going on. A lot of it actually is in the Truro area at the Agriculture College, also at Dalhousie and other places, but some really innovative work on things that we can do in terms of recycling, in terms of using waste for energy and so forth. And those are opportunities that I think, and I would hope that government would look to take more advantage of and really drive the economy based on a green economy, and I think that's where more can be done. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'm happy to have had the opportunity today, and I wish everybody a happy Earth Day.
Thank you. I recognize the honourable member for Argyle.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. It's my honour to stand for a few moments this evening and talk to the resolution that is before us, and I want to thank the member for Guysborough, Sheet Harbour, for bringing it here for debate. And I thought what I would do, because I know the first two speakers probably have a better handle on environmental issues than I do, but I'd probably take an opportunity to talk about Earth Day itself, because I mean that is the meat and potatoes of this resolution. And then maybe I'll divert just a little bit off to some issues that I see as important when it comes to the long-term environmental goals and environmental sustainability in the province of Nova Scotia. So ultimately, on April 22nd, there's more than 6 million Canadians will join 1 billion people in 170 countries in staging events and projects to address local environmental issues. It's encouraging to know, Madam Speaker, that almost every school-aged child in Canada will take part in some kind of Earth Day activity and learn the important Earth Day message. It's very important to look at that because, children have a true effect on the way that their parents react or purchase or buy, and how they drive their car, how they recycle. So it's very important that this starts not by a whole bunch of people talking about it, but actual programs that are in the schools. If we can, truly look at how Nova Scotia and how Canada, the U.S., North America, right across the world began the recycling movement, well, it happened in the schools by convincing kids that it was fun to do certain crafts with recycled items. It was a lot of fun to understand the recycling mechanisms, and that translated not just in school, but that translated, of course, to the homes. And I can tell you a lot of times where my kids will tell me that I've put the one container in the wrong receptacle and where things should be, and sometimes I have to remind them of what they're doing rather than chucking everything in the garbage. Earth Day was first launched in the U.S. in 1970 as an environmental awareness event that has grown, of course, into a powerful catalyst for change. Canadians began marking Earth Day in 1990. It's grown into Earth Week and into Earth Month to accommodate the thousands of events and projects. And Earth Day inspires awareness and appreciation for the natural environment. So this year's Canadian Earth Day theme is Give It Up for Earth Day. And organizers have issued a challenge for each of us to make simple changes to create a healthier world. You don't have to do big things to affect great change. It can be as simple as putting an out-of-order sign on your TV or switching to green cleaning products. In 2008, the former government took the aim at Earth Day into account when it developed and introduced the groundbreaking Environmental Goals and Sustainability Prosperity Act, or EXPA, as it's known. The objective of the legislation was to help solve environmental challenges while growing the Nova Scotia economy. There is a tremendous opportunity in green technology, in doing things differently, to be leaders in environmental sustainability that can create jobs and true sustainability for communities. And that was what was very important when I was a part of government, when we brought the EXPA Act into reality. We believed then, and we still believe, that Nova Scotia is uniquely positioned to be a leader in this area. We have the expertise to build on our international reputation with environmental innovations that not only keep our province clean and green, but employ our people and grow our economy. This is the balanced approach that makes sense and put us on a path of being one of the cleanest and most sustainable environments in the world by 2020. Saving the environment is a big job, though, Madam Speaker. But what celebrating Earth Day teaches us, that we all have a role to play in taking care of our Earth. That small changes in our everyday routines add up and can make a big difference. Let me add the voices of all members of the Progressive Conservative Caucus to support this resolution, and that we are all committed to getting the message out about the important lessons of Earth Day. Madam Speaker, there was a number of issues that were talked about by the previous members, and I too want to acknowledge the work that this government has done when it came to protecting once and for all, we hope, Georges Bank. And I do want to say that I also thank the ministers that were involved at the time for listening to the organizations, to the communities, to the opposition members on how to make that act even better. And there was a couple of additions that were made to it that make sure that future governments can't flip her on her head and make it invalid. Because I know from the community that I represent that protecting the riches of Georges Bank is very, very important. And it is a wondrous place that produces millions and millions and millions of fish that sustain our whole eastern seaboard. You know, it's not just what happens on Georges Bank, but it's what happens right across. So I do want to thank the government for shepherding that along. I do, though, want to question a little bit about the land purchase issue that the member for Guysborough Sheet Harbour did talk about. You know, we would question a little bit of the $80 million purchase of land in southwest Nova Scotia, you know, when other things were more pressing. And I will talk about the ferry in just a few moments, but an $80 million is as much as any government would want to purchase more Crown land in order to protect it. We have to find the balance between purchasing those lands and taking care of patients or making sure our economy is running. So there's a balance there, and we've questioned on many occasions the balance that was taken into consideration there. Madam Speaker, we too, you know, are trying to add things up when it comes to the protests that we see here at Province House. Last week we had a Save the Forest coalition that came in and spoke basically against the government. They weren't happy with what they were saying. They've always said that the NDP were our partners in the environment, and they feel that they've been set adrift. So, you know, I don't know whether the party is here as it once was, from what I'm hearing from the community. The EAC and the Ecology Action Centre has expressed its concerns that the things that they talked about when they were in opposition are not necessarily the things they're talking about now they're in government. So if there's a true a dedication to the environment in Nova Scotia, then why are these organizations coming here and expressing their displeasure with government? And Madam Speaker, I know that many people could stand here and say that you could do lots of things and it still wouldn't be right. But to lose friends like that is a huge challenge. Madam Speaker, there's tremendous opportunities in Nova Scotia on some larger scales. And for instance, I know the member for Dartmouth East just spoke about the issue of the AC, some larger energy projects. The AC right now is a leader, of course, in biogas or biogas energy projects, who are working with local farmers and in creating their own energy on the farms. Madam Speaker, University of Saint Anne is a leader in energy conservation and production. You know, through investments by the Nova Scotia government, by the federal government. They now have a phenomenal facility that burns biogas or biomass, that has windmills on site, uses solar to make that campus a very highly efficient area. My own area, where we have the Pumnico Wind Farm, is a true demonstration of how the community has gotten together to support green energy adding to the grid. So, Madam Speaker, I know I only have about a minute or so to go here. I do want to make sure that people here in this House of Assembly, and of course those who are watching online or on the TV, to make sure that they join in the other 6 million Canadians and enjoy April 22nd on being, of course, it's funny how I forget the name here, Earth Day, of course, that is happening on Friday. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The time allotted for late debate has expired. I want to thank everyone for participating in tonight's debate, and the House now stands adjourned to meet again tomorrow at 10 a.m.